on the East Coast. It is 5 o'clock on the West Coast. It is the 22nd of August in the year of our Lord 2024. Season 15, Episode 7, 676 times you have been welcome to the Clubhouse Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things sports, entertainment, pop culture, and pro wrestling. We are so happy to have you with us. Welcome. My name is Rob. I am the executive producer of the Clubhouse Podcast. And, you know, the last 3 weeks, we've been like, all right, we've had a bunch of stuff. Nope, now we got more. Because that's what we do. But I am not by myself. Don's still out on assignment. He will be back next week. But not only do I have my co-host, but we have a very special guest. So let's just do the split screen thing. Chabooyah! That way from me is my co-host and a man who I don't know what his t-shirt is because he didn't show it to me in pre-show. He is Alex. What's going on, man?
Oh, you should know exactly which shirt it is, since this is our start to our NFL preview. It's the I have a competition problem.
And then at the bottom of your screen, a man who has not been with us since we've been on this platform. That's how long it's been since he's been on the show.
It's true.
The host of the 1334 show, which I will always take credit for showing him something about that name that he didn't know. He is Stephen Zimmermann. How are you, brother?
Wait, I have been on one other time.
Since we've been
on one time. Yeah, I've been post studio, I think one time. And then on top of it, I am pulling the Tom Brady card. I am retiring when I want to, but I'll just do it here and there. So I keep telling people I'm retired, but I'll be back for another.
Wait you the day before the deadline and then pull back your paperwork?
Yeah, and then I'll send you a video of me crying on the beach saying I'm done.
Okay, so we are doing our AFC preview tonight, Alex, but my question for you is, would you like to do the other sports first and then come back to it? Because we do have North America's favorite game show.
If you'd like, feel free.
All right, so let's talk about MLB news real quick. Joey Votto has retired. I'm now officially calling it X-Twitter because that works on two different levels.
That is fair.
I can't be the first person that did it, but I thought about it yesterday, and I said, that's what I'm doing from now on. He put up a tweet saying that he got in a cab last night, and the cab, whatever, it was something he wasn't driving. And the driver was like, do you play baseball for the team? And I just said, nope. And he wasn't wrong because he was retired at that point. Let's look at your MLB standings in the AL East. Always our second favorite East to look at in this particular report. The Toronto Blue Jays are now 9 games below 500, and they're 15 and a half back in the division. We say it every week on this show. This division is just fun to watch, especially when you don't have a team in the race here. They're currently 5 games back on Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay now 3.5 back on Boston. Boston 6 backs on Baltimore. And Steven's beloved Yankees now with a 2-game win streak and a 1-game lead in the division. As we get
Aaron Judge saying, I'll do it myself.
No, it has nothing to do with Aaron Judge. I actually have to thank the Mets, the grimace Mets, for beating Baltimore twice in a row, okay? Because now I can rest a little easier, and I'm watching history repeat itself as Aaron Judge hit his 48th today. So I'm good.
AL Central, we all know who's in last place. We'll talk about it here in a minute. Currently, Detroit is 11 and a half back in the division. They're 4 games below 500. They are 9.5 back of Minnesota. Minnesota and Kansas City now tied, and with Cleveland losing 2 in a row, they're both 2 games back. In the AL West, in the proverbial toilet currently are Law.
When are they moving?
It's not Law that's moving.
Oh, it's the A's. That's right. It's Oakland.
They're saying that the Angels are the next ones up because after Oakland or after the Athletics move, they have the oldest stadium in baseball that has not been renovated.
Use Mayor McCheese to revive them.
They are a half game back on question mark.
Grimace revived the Mets.
They are currently 4 games back on the Rangers. The Rangers now 5 back on Seattle, who is 5 back on Houston. Seattle has lost 3 in a row. In the National League West, I'm doing things a little bit differently this week, so you have to forgive me. I also need to I'm trying to get the game up and running over here, and it's not. Watch the game, please. Watch
Don't
now.
bet on preseason football. Don't be that guy.
I'm experimenting with new tech in the studio, and the preseason is the perfect way to do it.
This is the first time I've experienced with any tech in like months. So
But he's like, no, I want to put the game on.
Right. In the NL West, the Colorado Rockies, they are currently 34 games under 500. And they are well on their way to the century mark. They're 29 games back in their division. They are 17 and a half back of San Francisco. The Giants now 7.5 back of the Padres, who are tied with Arizona. They are both 4 back on the Dodgers. The Dodgers currently on a 4-game heater. The NL Central, Don's beloved Pirates, have officially found the cellar. They are 8 games below 500. They could still finish with a winning record, but they're 13.5 back in the division. They're 2.5 back on the Reds. The Reds now a half game back on the Cubs. The Cubs a half game back on St. Louis, but none of that matters because St. Louis is still 10 back on Milwaukee. In the only division that matters, the NL East, Miami continues to stink up the joint. They are currently 35 games below 500. And they are currently 28.5 back. They are 11.5 back of the Nationals. The Nationals now 6.5 back of the Mets, who are in the middle of the pack. But the Mets are a game and a half back on Atlanta. Atlanta now 7 games back on Philly. Now, gentlemen, it is time for North America's favorite game show. What is the run differential for the Chicago White Sox? Part 74. Alex, go.
I was actually going to ask to defer to Stephen, who
I was deferring to you.
Paying attention to this.
We have Maddie's here, and we have somebody on YouTube that says.
Here's the reason I wanted. Yeah. But I wanted to defer to Stephen just to see what a possibly cold take on what you think this number is.
Oh, I don't have any words on the Chicago White Sox. I'm going to guess
is like I want
114.
Okay, so I will give roughly the same guess I had last week because I don't know. It felt like there weren't a lot of games in the last week for some reason, maybe rainouts or something. So I'm going to say minus 252. Steven, do you want to adjust your pick?
Yeah, I said minus 114.
No, I said, do you want to adjust it?
Yeah, all right. Do you want me to add another 100? We could do that. I was just trying to not be completely rude to a suffering franchise.
A long-suffering franchise.
Yes, yeah.
So you want to say, are you saying 214 now?
Yeah, I'll do it.
We also want to send a shout out, Pouring Takes checking in from YouTube.
A bunch of cowboy yeehaws.
The Chicago White Sox currently are 31-97. Alex, we could have the century mark within the next week. We said they'd get there before
the weekend.
Well, it depends on. I haven't looked at the schedule to see if we have.
Nor have I.
Let me look now.
They are currently 42.5 games back in the division. They are 18-44 at home. They're 13-53 on the road. 3-7 in their last 10. Now, to give you perspective, the only other team in a triple negative in the American League is La at minus 112. Great R&B band from the 90s. In the National League, you've got Miami at minus 174, and Colorado is now back kind of in contention at minus 200. Alex, if you had guessed your guess last week, you would have been winner, chicken dinner.
I don't even remember what my guess was. I thought it was 250.
You said 252, and that was last week's number.
Oh, okay.
Currently, the Chicago White Sox have a run differential of minus 259. They're going to hit 300. I'm telling you.
That might be literally attached to the trunk. It's so not out on a limb there.
This is baseball. I will say that if they hit that number.
I'm cheering for them to lose the rest of the year.
I mean, they only need 3 more games to hit the century mark, and they'll be the first to do it. And if you look around, I'm trying to find out who else has a chance at it. I mean, Miami's 19 away, as is Colorado. Steven, we're getting some weird. I think you got some weird noise coming off you now.
What? Ooh.
It's just a little staticky feedback.
There we go. It's gone now.
All right, good.
Might be me. Yeah, it's me. But yeah, that's the close. The only other teams that could get there are Miami and Colorado. But they're 19 games out, but they're still 10 ahead of Chicago, the South Side. Wow. God love you. Somebody has to. All right, let's get into our NFL talk. First of all, Hard Knocks with the Chicago Bears, episode 3 aired this week. Shout out to their punter. I still think we should use Crocodile Punter because I thought that was hilarious. But I like this kid. Like,
I was very impressed.
The skills. Holy cow, the skills on this kid.
But the thing I like better about that is highlighting the international programs to grow the game. Where Pro Kick Australia, he was just a construction worker who had played Aussie rules football. And the fact that the NFL or tangentially other groups are doing these kind of programs to find this kind of talent.
Hey, here's something we haven't seen in a while. Anthony Richardson on a field. But I agree with you. I think I love his story. I want to hear more about him. I did like the whole Caleb Williams going, I'm not going to need you much this year. He's like,
and then immediately being told, that's 3 in the first quarter, homie.
Well, and then it was just like, hey, I'm okay with that. If I'm sitting down the whole season, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Tyson Bagent and his dad. The kid's got an arm.
Yeah,
he's fine. His dad reminds me of country LeVar Ball.
That's not a bad relation, except for the fact that I don't hate
freshman match. Never know.
Stand him.
And I did like that Caleb Williams practice is harder than games, because isn't that what you want?
Yeah,
that's the mentality you want.
Well, I feel like the correct way is to throw that to Steven. He's the one that's had more football practice and game experience than us combined.
You're not wrong.
So, yeah, I just know he says that now, but then when he has a guy that's actually trying to put food on the table for his family because he has a contract coming up and he's coming off the edge and he hits him at full speed, it's not some JUCO kid trying to make the team that might whiff you because he won't make it in week 1. Yeah, I'd be a little more afraid. I wouldn't say all those comments that quick.
That's that USC thing. I just saw a stat that showed Anthony Richardson had 6 starts in high school and 13 in college.
And it took him like 6 weeks to throw 1 touchdown at Florida. It took him 6 weeks to throw 1 touchdown. Like, he's not a good quarterback. I never got it.
He's Tim Tebow, but with a better running game.
I'm not even so certain because he's brittle. He went out after 1 year. Tim Tebow at least ran people over.
Let's put a pin in that because we got a note on it.
Let's go into the scores last week. I'm waiting for my screen to refresh here. Last week, Philadelphia beats New England by a point, as does Baltimore to Atlanta. Chicago all over Cincinnati, as we saw in those highlights, 27-3. Houston beats the Giants by 18. Detroit over Kansas City by a point, but like we said last week about Jacksonville, don't put any stock in that. Minnesota beats Cleveland by 2 touchdowns and, one being a 2-point conversion. Indianapolis by 8 over Arizona. Tennessee beats Seattle by a point. Miami beats the Commanders by a touchdown. Buffalo 9-3 over the Steelers. The Rams 13-9 over the Chargers for the Battle of Los Angeles. Great movie, underrated. New York beats the New York Jets beat Carolina by a field goal. Tampa Bay gets beat by 13 to Jacksonville. Cowboys get a win over the Raiders. Denver beats up on Green Bay, and San Francisco beats New Orleans by 6. We are still currently scoreless in the game that is on Amazon Prime Video, whatever they're calling it this week. We're 5 minutes in, scoreless, Indianapolis and Cincinnati. Coming up in here in just a few minutes on NFL Network, you will either be watching Chicago at Kansas City or Jacksonville at Atlanta. Tomorrow night, Miami and Tampa Bay in Raymond James Stadium. San Francisco runs down the road a piece to Las Vegas to play the Raiders. Carolina at Buffalo. Pittsburgh will be at Detroit. Something's got to give. Baltimore will be at Green Bay on Saturday, as will Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh and the Carolina games are both Saturday. All of this is at noon Central. Minnesota at Philly. Rams at Texans. Chargers at Cowboys at 3 Central. Giants, Jets for the Battle of New York in New Jersey at 6:30 Central. Your night game is Cleveland at Seattle. Oh, the button doesn't work. Tennessee will go to New Orleans.
The button doesn't work.
I remember I couldn't get it working.
We heard crickets.
So did I, but I've muted it. I don't know what the heck is going on right now. Sunday at 1 Central, Tennessee will be at New Orleans, 3:30 Central, Arizona at Denver. And we have Sunday night football this week, gentlemen, as New England goes to the Washington Football Club. All right. We now go live to Rockwall, Texas, because this week and next week we are featuring our AFC and NFC preview extravaganzas, as Alex will walk us through it. If we have time after that, we've got stuff on the run sheet, but this is what we dedicate to this because football life is about to begin very shortly. We are 2 weeks away.
And I really love the fact that we're splitting it up this way, because this week we can get some autumn wind and next week we can get a frozen tundra. And
we have Stephen with us, who's also an AFC guy like myself. That helps as well.
Yeah. But I'm just going to go with a quick, why should we listen to these guys? For 2023, we want to acknowledge anything we get right that is a good call. Anything that we got wildly wrong, I got a few of those. But to give you an idea, with our predictions last year, we had, 6, 8, 17 of 32 team records predicted perfectly. If you look at being one off for those wins, we got another 23. Now, granted, that comes up over, but that's because we had some that were in common. And if you even want to get that even crazier, if you look at our AFC South from last, none of us got much of anything right outside of Jacksonville's record, and that's about it. But we do have some different highlights. Figure we'll focus more on the fantasy. That's what people want to look at. Josh Allen was the number 2 against pressure again, so we got that right with Buffalo. Devon Achane, even though I think I mispronounced his name at least 3 times.
I think it just depends on who you ask.
Did you see the Devon Achane versus Reggie Bush stat, though, from last year?
He had more 40-yard runs in one season than it did for
I want to addendum that though real quick. Reggie Bush, we knew as an electric player getting long runs. So the barometer we're using is 40+ yard runs. Devon Achane in 11 games, because started the season hurt, got hurt a little bit during the middle of the year. In 11 games, had as many 40+ yard runs as Reggie Bush had in 11 years. I want to take a big feather in my cap on that call. Patriots being terrible. We had arguably one of my worst calls was saying that I can't believe every team in the AFC North has a expected win total of a winning record. It's never happened. It's never going to happen. Well, guess what? Every team in the AFC North had a winning record, including the Steelers.
Do you think that's why the entire division's on Hard Knocks?
I think that might be part of it, but what I really think it is that there's been enough turnover to be interesting. There's been select turnover and storylines in every one of those teams. Plus, Anybody disagree with me that is the toughest division in football and has been for a while?
Not gonna, by the way, just touchdown Indy.
Hmm.
I think I'm excited for this Hard Knocks. I've been saying it for weeks ever since we discovered it, but it does break the one rule that Hard Knocks has had for years, and you weren't supposed to be, at least one of those was a playoff team, and you weren't supposed to be a playoff team the year before. So, but I'm here. I'm ready.
But speed running the AFC North, Jamar Chase being the number 1 wide receiver overall. Joe Burrow's injury kind of ruined that, but we're going to have a fun note on him in a bit when we get to 2024. I said that Lamar Jackson was going to set passing bets across the board with Todd Monken. His yards and completion percentages were all massively up. However, his TDs and other various metrics were down. But that's also because he's had a couple of really electric seasons passing. So jumping into the AFC South, I'm going to be on this hill for at least one more year with Trevor Lawrence. Should be better. And he really, really wasn't last year. In fact, he was so middle of the pack. He was 17th out of 32 starting QBs. Anthony Richardson, I was very high on, and he had 4 rushing TDs in 3 games, except for the fact that he had to leave 2 of those 4 games for injury. As Steven said, going to give him credit on that one, brittle. Interestingly enough, none of us had remotely anything correct about the Titans, or excuse me, the Texans, saying DeMeco Ryans is going to be building something, but it's not going to be in 1 year. Well, CJ Stroud proved that wrong. Mahomes having his worst stats of his career. He's been on the decline for 3 seasons running. It's not really a big pull. In the general rule, Josh Jacobs is going to suck. Accurate, but that tends to be normal with every holdout. So put a pin in that. We're going to have a few of those when we get to 2024. Oh, Russell Wilson. Did you know he led the league in fourth quarter touchdowns last year?
Yes.
Was it because most of it was garbage time and the defense had their third string at that point?
Well, no, that's what I thought. Stretch of games where he was probably the best quarterback in the NFL.
He did have about a month in there where they had a nice long home stretch and they were like,
that's why they benched him.
But if that gives you a good idea, Russell Wilson had 11. Number 2 was Brock Purdy at 10, and then it was a bit of a drop off from there. Okay, I'm going to take my lumps. When I'm going to take my lumps, I said Tony Pollard was going to be great. He was so bad, he's not even on the team. Hey, I'm going to own when I'm wrong. I'm going to own when I'm wrong if I'm going to get credit when I'm right.
What we do on this show.
Now, I'm Rob. I'm going to give you just a little bit of a lump here. You did say the words, the NFC North is going to be bad, and there's no way a wild card comes out of this division. Compare that with saying somebody on the show saying Green Bay's offense is going to surprise and impress. They were a wild card team and destroyed Dallas. So I think it's worth that win.
All right, fair enough.
That's not hard in the first round of the playoffs, though. I'm sorry.
I'm not saying it's hard, but I'm saying that they got
winning
there.
the little Papa Shot game at Chuck E. Cheese.
But a W is a W, bro.
Sir, the Papa Shot at Chuck E. Cheese is still full size for somebody of my height. I need you to respect that.
Sorry.
He's hitting outside.
I was very adamant that Mike Evans was going to keep his streak alive of 1,000-yard games, and I said it wasn't even going to be close. He broke 1,000 by week 12. So, feather there. I was really high on the Saints, and so was Don. As soon as Ryan Ramczyk went out hurt, Derek Carr was running for his life, and the rest of that team was bad, and maybe Dennis Allen's just not a good coach. It's a possibility.
So that's one I was right on.
You were also fairly high. Interestingly enough, both you and Don were close. I was shocked because I thought the Saints were terrible, but they had a winning record in 2023, and I don't know how that happened. You picked one game too low, Don picked one game too high, and I was way too high on them. But the other one in that same scope, McCaffrey being the first Niner in umpteen years to rush over 1,000 yards. He had almost 1,500, and that's not even counting the receiving, getting him to the Madden cover. Can't wait for this curse to kick in. But the last one that we had that was a big one, was Kyler Murray and everybody saying like, oh, he's healed up. He was having time and saying that he's not going to be healthy at any point in 2023. He only played 8 games, was never quite right, but was decent for fantasy just because he runs like a toddler who just stole a cookie. But at that same time, that's all you really need from a QB that runs for fantasy, which is why Anthony Richardson is going to be a very popular pick as long as he's healthy. Big asterisk. Steven, go ahead and say it.
What's the asterisk? Oh, I'm sorry. My dog wanted to come in and try to interrupt the show.
When healthy.
Who? Anthony Richardson?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, I was out on him when he was playing at Florida because it took him 6 weeks to throw a touchdown, and they lost every game. Like, he physically looked great, but he never did anything. And he you know who he reminded me of? A guy who couldn't throw, but like Malik Willis or whoever was on Tennessee who's fizzled into nothing.
Malik Willis, yeah, out of Liberty.
Same guy, same exact guy.
Yeah.
And also, while we're talking about it, Fanatics, hear me.
Oh,
hear me, Fanatics. Don't show me pictures of a Florida belt and not sell said belt. Florida is not on the roster right now.
I never saw pictures of the belt.
There's a picture of one that's from behind, and you can see it says Gators diagonally, and it's blue and orange, but you can't find it on the website. So,
well, I didn't want to be this guy, but you haven't had a winning season in 3 years.
I know you.
As the Hurricanes, and the Hurricanes got like 2 of them,
and they carbon copied them all,
making
them look different, like they did for baseball.
Let's be honest. That's kind of what it's going to be at this point. We even said that there's going to be like 3 different belts for everything at most. And I think what they've realized is that the variations throw people off. So everything's going to be about the same.
Yeah.
No, there's a Florida one. There is a Florida one.
Did they finally get, because the initial lineup did not have it?
I think what they did was all the ones that they could sell based off like celebrities or whatever that were within the company. But yeah, Florida is next to Ohio State and right above Florida State. In Alabama on Fanatics.
Above Florida State's where we should be.
Yes. Too bad it hasn't.
I don't really think you can see it, but it's there.
I like it.
Yeah. I like the blue strap.
Not for $5.50.
You're not wrong.
No. I saw a New York Rangers one I wanted, and I was like, no, never mind.
Gentlemen, are you ready for the new season?
Been ready since we started the show, sir.
All right. So same as last year, we're going to go
not.
alphabetically through the divisions and in order of finish from 2023.
Okay, so we're starting with the East.
We are starting with the AFC East. So in order of finish, it'll be Buffalo, Miami, New York, and then New England. So if you want to get any schedules pulled up and ready to go on predictions.
I'm ready with Buffalo.
All right, are you ready for me to blow your wheels off?
Always.
All of the over-unders on the Clubhouse podcast are brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks.
No free ads.
It's not free.
For you,
we'll talk. So, with Buffalo, would you prefer to have the same question as last year? Stephen, this will be a little bit new for you. Do you want the win total to pick over, under, or to work off of, or do you want the team notes first?
Always finish with the over under.
Good with that, Rob?
I agree.
All right, Buffalo.
I like you giving the depth and then we do the analysis. I dig that. I like it because it brings everybody else into the discussion as well. I totally dig it.
It's the opposite of what we did last year.
And that's fine.
I know. Okay.
We've done it the same way ever back-to-back years.
Buffalo has the second most vacated targets in the NFL at 317, most of those actually being Stephon Diggs, now in Houston, and Gabe Davis, who is in Jacksonville for reasons. So, in those circumstances, what you tend to see in a lot of vacated targets is those tend to fall to the tight end. Buffalo drafted Dalton Kincaid last year, and he was awesome, even though he had to overcome Dawson Knox, usually by injury, but I feel like he's going to be a de facto supersized slot for them, so he is going to get a lot of that look. But the other part you're going to have is James Cook, who struggled for the first roughly half of last season until they made an OC change to Joe Brady. Now, they heavily focused on the run. It improved. It helped with the line play. It also brought Josh Allen's interceptions down. So I'm expecting a lot from James Cook. And for anybody that's saying, well, they drafted Keon Coleman. Look, I love Keon Coleman. He's a funny guy. I want the best for him, but he is a raw player. He is not going to light it up. They may force feed him a little bit this year, but he will not be a 1-to-1 replacement for Stephon Diggs. With that, any team that has Josh Allen has a chance. So I'm going to expect them to still be good. Not as great as they had been because Stephon Diggs was an all-world talent. He might be a little bit cooked. Rob, did you just change your camera for a reason?
Yeah, it did that thing where my camera just blanks out on me, and that's how I have to reset it. I could hear everything. You just couldn't see me.
So, in that same scope with those tidbits of information, was there anything you were curious about with the Bills changing year to year or anything that you were thinking about?
They don't have the bye until week 12.
Mm-hmm.
That is a rough go. Now, if you go on a playoff run, that's not necessarily a bad thing because you're a little fresher than some other teams will be. But to have the bye that late in the regular season, if I am a Bills fan and my company has naming rights to the stadium and it was not passed through me, let's be clear on this, I would be concerned on that front. Now, granted, I still think the Bills are going to do very well this year, but I think there's going to be some. They've got, let's see here. In that first 11 weeks, they've got 2 primetime games against Miami on a Thursday night, and then they've got Monday Night Football at the Jets, which I'd like to see who scheduled those, at least the second one. But those are both divisional games. Now, after that, they come off the bye week to Sunday Night Football, which is also not a bad deal there. And then they don't have another primetime game the rest of the season. I think that's just, man, it's a long way to go before you get the bye.
I actually think that week 12 with the new schedule is pretty solid for contenders because it gets it late enough in the year that they can heal up without having the long stretch. I think it's far superior than the early bye, which we see with certain other teams, even within this division.
By the way, Russ checked in. He wants to say what's up to Steven.
Yep. What's up, Russ?
All right. So what are we looking at for an over-under here, sir?
The total wins set by BetMGM, the king of sportsbook, is 10.5. So, gentlemen, I want you to tell me over or under and what your number of wins expected is.
Steven, you are our guest. I will defer to you.
I mean, to be honest, with all the turmoil within the coaching, like the coaching staff there, erratic play with a questionable number 1 receiver, I still got them 3rd in the AFC East, and I got them going 10-7, just missing the wild card.
Rob,
I absolutely
under.
agree with Steven. Looking at the schedule, I think they've got 10 wins in them, and that will put me at the under.
I really hate that this happened on the first go because we all have the exact same situation.
Yeah.
Same amount of wins without discussing it, and we all have them 3rd in the division. So, Steven, as the man wearing the Channing Crowder, if you want to make the call, we are on to Miami.
Okay, so this is just me. I can't stand Mike McDaniel. I don't like him. A little too cutesy.
Have you seen the latest meme that said in two
about the kingpin?
I hate it so much.
Yeah, he went from the Best Buy manager to a South Florida drug lord.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan, but he's running a decent offense until he gets too cutesy with it. I trust the offense enough. I trust the defense even more. And I know that's saying something this year with the new defensive coordinator, losing Christian Wilkins, everything like that. I really trust the defense more than the offense because what Mike McDaniels has to realize, you can't, one, in the red zone, try to force over-the-shoulder fades to Tyreek, who's one of the shortest players in the NFL, when you have, like, Jonnu Smith now on the team. And then Raheem Mostert, I'm sorry, he should be maybe 4th on the depth chart. And he was a touchdown gypsy because of everything everyone else did in between the 20s. I'm not a fan. Like,
may I include a note on that one before you go too far off of that? So Raheem Mostert had 19 touchdowns in his career before last year. He had 18 rushing touchdowns last year, 11 of which came from inside the 5, which actually backs up what Steven just said.
That's what I'm saying. Like I've paid attention to it. Like I think Raheem Mostert, he's getting up there in age. He's not Devon
He
Chan.
is 32.
I trust Chris Brooks, he's a guy I think who should be the number 2 running back. And then you got Wright.
I like
who just got
Jalen Wright
drafted
a
from
lot.
Yeah, he's gonna be good in a year or two. Don't blow him out in the first couple years, but like he's gonna be great. But I'd like those 3 guys more than Raheem Mostert. Tua, I like this new version of Tua, everything like that. I'm looking forward to the year, but again, we gotta see. It's all Mike McDaniels because he can't abandon the run like when they're down by 3 and tries to throw everything. Like it just doesn't work.
We have a breaking headline for you, gentlemen. The Chiefs and Creed Humphrey have agreed 4 years, $72 million. He's now the highest paid center in the league.
Didn't Chris Humphries like marry what's her face?
Creed
that's
Kardashian?
Creed Humphrey.
Oh, Creed.
That was Chris Humphries from the NBA. That's not even the same.
I was like,
dude.
And he's selling used cars
was he a center too?
He was a forward.
We'll carry forward then.
Thanks for that derailment.
By the way, and Cincinnati just got a pick 6. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about you were talking about McDaniel going, Jalen Waddle was never healthy last year, but he has been great when he has been healthy, even with Tyreek on the field. But the big note that I have for that receiving side, in the first 12 weeks last year, Tyreek Hill eclipsed 100 yards 8 out of those 12 times. The big note there is he got injured in the game after that and never went over 100 yards after. So circling back to our beloved diminutive, my favorite Dolphin player, because I can talk to him eye to eye without looking up, Devon Achane. He averaged a rush of 40-plus yards like we talked about per game last season. Now, the other part that you have is that Denver game that we all very much enjoyed watching, where he just went absolutely nuts and had 56% of his fantasy points for the season in that game alone. Then again, he had it with 2 other games. If you take out those 3 games, he never had a game over 15 touches, but those 3 games where he did have 15 was absolutely nuts. He has bulked up this season. I am loving Devon Achane's potential. He just needs to stay healthy.
That is one thing I'll call. Like the night of draft, the draft night when they got him, I looked at my fiance. I was like, that's going to be our guy. And no one saw anything at Texas A&M. I just said, trust me. He goes into camp, whatever. So she does her dynasty draft. She does everything. I said, just get him, whatever. And everyone constantly will bulk up these trades to try to trade for him in fantasy. I was like, I don't care about fantasy. I'm just talking about the quality of player he is because he has vision. He's really good.
I'm double checking something because you just threw me off a little bit. I could have sworn he went. Who am I thinking? Oh, I'm thinking of a different player. Because when you said A&M, I was like, wait a minute. Wasn't he? But,
No, he was A&M. Yeah.
No. Because he and Charbonnet went close in the draft, and I was thinking of UCLA. But at 9.5 wins, where do you got him, Stephen?
I got them 11-6. They lose the division by half a game and make the wild card.
Rob.
I'm also on the over. I think having the bye in week 6 benefits Miami because they've got a pretty good before the bye schedule that will help them build some things up, get some momentum. I am a little intrigued that the second to the last game of the year is primetime against Cleveland. That's a little weird for me, but I believe this team will hit the over. I would debate whether they win the division, but I think we'll probably know that with about 90% assurity before Halloween.
I just don't like that.
I'm still waiting for
week.
the win total.
12.
Whew. So it's funny that you mentioned the early bye week. I actually have them only winning 10 games because I think the early bye week is going to be wildly detrimental to this team.
Agreed.
Because you're going to have a long stretch with guys that have injury history. And if we're being honest, it wasn't the cold weather as much that beat the Dolphins last year, despite the narrative that people love. It was the fact that they dealt with so many injuries. Now,
They signed 3 edge rushers the week before the game.
Exactly. They were depleted with a capital D. So if they can stay healthy, they're going to blow that number out of the water, and Rob's going to be the closest.
Well, and I'm looking at that stretch after the bye week, and I'm going to be honest with you, from October 20th to January 5th, there are only 3 games that concern me.
I am far more concerned with that end of the year stretch based on certain trap aspects to it, but that's why I have them barely hitting the over with 10 wins, but I do have them with a tiebreaker over Buffalo for second in the division.
And Steven, when was the last time we didn't play New England in December? Because they've got the Jets twice in December, but the last game we have versus New England is the week of Thanksgiving.
2 seasons ago, I think. It was 2 seasons ago or last season they didn't have New England in December.
I'm just so used to that at Gillette in December, the game we always tend to do well because it's for some reason we can beat them on the road when it's snowing.
Well, even like last year, they did Sunday night football like week 5 or week 4 against the Patriots, like real early on in Gillette. So
there's a
Gillette that weekend
as to why this is, and it's the lack of Thomas Edward Brady. New England's going to be garbage. We're going to get there. The Dolphins are going to be in it. Even if they're not in first or contending, they're going to be in contention for a wild card spot at worst. And New England's not. So they don't care about that game. That's why it's not going to be showing up anywhere of reason. Don't be surprised if it's, and I cannot remember this, I'm literally spitballing, if it's going to be like New England versus Tennessee at the end of the year because it's a throwaway game. But
well, I can say that I am going to predict that game against Cleveland's going to get flexed.
Now, before we get to New England's dumpster fire, we have the Jets, which I am still shocked at how good the Jets were, despite having ostensibly no quarterback play at any point during the season, and they still won 7 games. Go figure. So, the other interesting note you have with that, I've been banging the drum for Garrett Wilson for 2 seasons, especially with somebody like Rodgers coming in who knows how to utilize talent. Garrett Wilson, since he came into the league, has been 3rd in the NFL in targets. So the dude knows how to get open and draw the target. However, he has never had anything above a 28th ranked quarterback actually throw him a pass. Now, to give you that scope, Rodgers never targeted him in his 4 dropbacks last year. So this should be interesting, even though I think this team will struggle on offense more than some people expect, because Rodgers, and Steven, you might be able to better speak to this. Rodgers has always been a back foot plant and like wrist thrower versus a full body thrower. And with his Achilles having to be repaired, that could hurt him a lot. He's not going to be as mobile, but it's also going to affect how he throws potentially.
I just think he's going to do a like widen base, stomp your feet. Like he's going to get it out faster than he ever does. It's not going to be the typical, let me pirouette around and figure it out. Like,
yeah,
he's going to be like a Brady, a Tua, someone where it's just quick. Like, let's get it out. Like Tony Romo back in the day, like just put the feet down, throw it, just get out. Don't hit me.
The West Coast flick, basically.
Yeah. Just fling it.
Yeah. But interestingly enough, because for him, it's always been wrist and footwork, that makes me more concerned with his Achilles injury than somebody that we're going to talk about next week, like Kirk Cousins, who has been more of a full body torque thrower. But I mentioned the Garrett Wilson aspect in that same scope. He has at least 83 catches and over 1,000 yards in his first 2 seasons without that. I think that is his floor for this season. I'm expecting over 90. I'm expecting him to be over 1,200, and I'm expecting him to at least have 8 touchdowns. Now, I know that those are big numbers for a Jets receiver, but this is a different situation.
Look, I'm just going to say this as a Dolphin fan. F the Jets. We're good. Let's figure it out.
Yeah. But the biggest change for the Jets that has me really liking their chances this year, it wasn't just Rodgers getting blasted or going down 4 4 plays in, they knew their line was a problem. Pro Football Focus has them as a top 5 offensive line after acquiring 3 starters, 1 by draft, 1 by signing, 1 by trade, including bringing back Morgan Moses, who was an anchor for them for years, as well as bringing in Tyron Smith. If he can stay healthy, that's a heck of a tackle bookend for them. So, at 9.5, Rob, where do you got the Jets?
Under at 5.
I'm sorry, did you say 5?
Heard me. I'm not playing with this. Last
No,
year, I told you I wasn't falling for the Hard Knocks rope-a-dope, and I was right. And this team does not look to me like I'm watching them, and I'm like, it's the Jets. 5. And I'm standing on it. I'm standing on business, as the kids like to say.
Jets will jet. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is also me. When I say something, I'm usually wrong on this point. They're going to win the division by half a game, 11-6, just like the Dolphins, but they win the first meeting. That's them.
I actually have the Jets winning the division as well, but clearly at 12 wins. So I was not mentally prepared for 5, but let's moving on. There is literally nothing to talk about the Patriots. I don't see what other people are seeing in Drake
3.
May.
That's it. 3 wins. That's it.
But for those that are paying attention, the 2 notes I have, I said Ramondre Stevenson was going to be a value. He's going to be a value again because he's the only part of the offense, but he's going to see double-digit people in the box. They're going to dare people to throw it while leaving a receiver open. Now, the other part about that is new offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt was 29th in passing all 4 years he was with the Browns. And now he doesn't really have an option because there is no passing until Drake May proves me wrong. So 4.5. I actually agree with Steven at 3 wins. It's exactly what I have as well. How about you, Rob?
They've got a deep bye as well. The only primetime game they have all year is week 3 on Thursday night. Almost every other game outside of international is a noon central start. That's how little faith the league has in this team. I'm going 2.
Ooh, I like that. All right. We talked about him at Hard Knocks because it's going to be the in season for the AFC North.
Let's do it.
One of my favorite predictions of last year was Baltimore had their wins and just about everything exactly right from a team aspect. I'm not as much on the Derrick Henry bandwagon with the acquisition, but Derrick Henry is an anomaly and he's going to run until he just can't. So the fun notes I have on it, Derrick Henry has averaged 1,353 rushing yards and 12.5 TDs over the last 2 years. The Titans were bottom 3 in yards before contact. They had a negative expectation on running plays, which means he was getting hit in the backfield every time. If you look at Ravens running
north or south?
I thought I said north.
Yeah,
but you're talking about the Titans.
No, you're talking about
he's on the Ravens now.
Okay, you started mentioning Tennessee and my brain fried.
Because
right, because I'm talking about Derrick Henry.
Yeah, that's where my brain got screwed. Okay.
Yeah. So to circle back, Derrick Henry, really good on a really bad Titans team. However, if you look at the Ravens running backs just last year, they had almost 1,700 rushing yards among the group and 20 TDs. Even when not getting great line play, the Ravens running backs have averaged 4.8 yards per carry with Lamar Jackson because they have to respect that run. This will be the first year that the Ravens have a leading rusher not named Lamar Jackson in 5 years. At a win total of 10.5, Steven, where you got him?
9 wins. Under.
Whew. Rob.
Looking at the Ravens, I'm very interested in this division too, because starting the first week of October, all 4 teams have their bye within 5 weeks. So, in my opinion, I don't know that there's an advantage to any of them in that particular order. The latest of them being Baltimore, who gets the bye the week of December 8th. I'm looking at the schedule now. it's Baltimore, which they're another one that I just don't buy the rope-a-dope. I don't know what it is about the Ravens. They're not a team that I fear. They're not a team that I look at and go, "Oh God, here they come." Like I did. Let's call it in the early aughts. Let's see here. I think they've got 5 in them. Me, actually, you know what? I'll go 7. I'm feeling saucy. I just don't see them finishing above 500. I don't know why.
I don't see that bad, but I got him at 9.
So after going through, seeing where the travel schedules work out, along with the strength of schedule being in the AFC North, where every other team has a question mark, I have them winning 14.
Woo!
Now,
you doubled
Cleveland
up on
Browns. Yep. Cleveland Browns. Here's an interesting little tidbit. Amari Cooper is still considered a very good receiver. He had 1,250 receiving yards last year, which was a career high. He had 5 touchdowns all year, despite having that many yards. If you take away his week 16, he doesn't break 1,000 yards, and he only has 3 touchdowns. And here's the fun fact. All of his best games were with Joe Flacco, who you're probably going to be seeing playing for the Colts here in about 5 to 10 minutes. But all of that says there's going to be no passing game. I like David Njoku. I like his ability, but you have to be able to get him the ball. And I've seen nothing from Deshaun Watson since his return that tells me he's going to be competent in Cleveland. So as much as everybody is liking what happened with the Browns, I think that spoke more to Joe Flacco as a leader and being able to just do the job, as well as them having the number 1 defense in the NFL all of last year. So with a win total at 8.5, I'm going to tell you flat out, I got them under at 7. Steven.
I got him at 11 wins, second in the division, because Deshaun Watson can't just come off a couch and play a full season clearly after sitting with all the stuff for 2 years. So, all right. And then the defense is good. Everything you're saying was right. But they're now another year together. That defense, everything like that. I got them going 11-6.
Rob.
Flip it for me.
6-11?
6. It's Cleveland.
Brownie the Elf is a curse.
It's just like they don't have the toughest schedule on the planet, but they're also not good.
So moving from Cleveland to Pittsburgh, because rivalries and how things work, this one I'm not going to bury the lead. The win expectation on BetMGM is 8.5 for the Steelers, which I feel like is what they have set it at for the last 7 years, just saying Tomlin, not Tomlin, Tomlin, not Tomlin, as far as that goes. I mentioned Russell Wilson leading the league in fourth quarter TDs, but the other interesting note about that, in the last 2 years in Denver, he was sacked more times than any 2 years combined. Even his bad year in Seattle, any 2 years combined, he was sacked more in the last 2 years for Denver. And as Steven mentioned earlier, he didn't play all the games. So you combine that with the fact that I think they'd be better off just trying to find out what they can get out of Justin Fields. That's just my personal opinion. But Pittsburgh has by far the most difficult schedule in the NFL outside of the Patriots and the Browns being close to him. Now, I want to go ahead and show you this because coming off of Sharp analysis for football, Warren Sharp's people are some of the most in-depth reviewing. Now, the way to look at this is up to the left is the easiest schedule, down to the right is the most difficult. You'll notice Steelers, Patriots, Browns, and then there is a jump up to the rest of the teams that are in a subtle curve. It's going to be a rough year for the Steelers. And while I get that back up so I can go ahead and track it, Rob, at 8.5, where do you have the Steelers?
I'm going to take the under at 7 because of their difficulty. They've got a tough stretch out of the gate. I mean, at Atlanta, at Denver, home against the Chargers, at Indy, home against Dallas. The only one that I could see them like they're going to win that game, probably Denver. But I'm not saying they're going to run.
See it as Indianapolis. But I want to go ahead and say, like I said, with the hard stretch, I have them at 6 wins for the year, which is interesting because Stephen mentioned earlier, which is why I wanted to give him the hammer here. He said he had the Steelers winning the division, but I don't know if he was serious.
They're going to win 12 games.
Woo!
That defense is stout. Strength of schedule, nothing. Every time someone has a strength of schedule, whatever, the team with the easiest always ends up losing their division, and they could be a great team. Like, I don't buy any of that. Russell Wilson, like we said, was probably one of the best 3 quarterbacks statistically last year, and he's on a team with a coach that's competent and a winner. Cool. You got a good, viable backup now, too, at least we think. And then you got all these. The only thing they're missing is a real number 1 receiver. There's no way they
don't think
win
Pickens
this
is a number 1?
He's a good number 2 somewhere. He's like CD Lamb. You're not a real number 1. You're a number 2 somewhere. So but I don't even, just full disclosure, I hate the Steelers. But I got them to win the division, the 12 wins. You can't write it off. I don't like the scheduling thing. In the first like 5 or 6 games, y'all rile it off. Like, they're better than all of those teams other than maybe Dallas. And I don't like Dallas either.
That's why we love Steven's analysis here. He knows football. But if we got to round it out, we got the Cincinnati Bengals, who literally did not have their starting QB healthy at any point last year. And we got, Joe Burrow, the Cincinnati Nightmare, coming in with the new blonde hair. But T. Higgins is the highlight I want to put on this because Jamar Chase is still dealing with the holdout. Ocho Cinco thinks that without a deal, he's not even going to show up. I don't know how that's going to work, so I can't speak to it. But T. Higgins was wide receiver 40 last year, wildly below where he was drafted in fantasy, but he only had 9 full games, and only 5 of those games were with Burrow, who was still hurt at that point. So his statistics should have been bad. Same with Jamar Chase. He had a down year, but nobody was healthy. Now, in the games that they have played together, and I mean Higgins and Burrow throughout his career, he's a top 12 receiver in targets, yards, and touchdowns. And that was with a healthy Tyler Boyd, who is now on the Tennessee Titans. Circling back, still talking about the Bengals, but Tyler Boyd is out of town. The only thing you have competing with T. Higgins as the number 2, if not the number 1, if Chase actually sits out, is a rookie in Jermaine Burton. Now, you could argue other things, but the other crazy fact you have about this, in his entire career, this is the first season Joe Burrow is going into actually healthy. I am excited to see where Cincinnati goes because they don't have Joe Mixon. They traded him to Houston, so their run game is Zach Moss and Chase Brown. So good luck with that. I'm seeing a lot of throwing the rock. Now, I'm still stunned that you had 12 wins for the Steelers, but I appreciate and cannot fault any of your analysis, Steven. With the Bengals at 10.5 wins on BetMGM, where do you have them?
Right at 10.
Right
exactly
at
10.
So
third in the division.
Under.
Yep.
How about you, Rob?
Looking at the schedule, normally I wouldn't circle a game versus Dallas. But Dallas in December, if they're a team that's backed into a corner, they're not a team I want to play in December. But I'm still going to go under, even what Steven said. I'm going down to 8.
I mean, eventually we got to put the injury-prone thing on Joe Burrow, too. He can't stay healthy a whole season. I mean,
then he's just
going to have to.
Then he's just going to ask everybody what they want to talk about. So.
So, interestingly enough, I have Cincinnati as the leading wild card with 12 wins. Now, the only reason they don't have the division is because I had that massive number on the Ravens. But balance it out with the Browns and the Steelers going under. So, AFC South. The shock for everybody with Houston Texans and D'Amico Ryans turning it around immediately with CJ Stroud. Whew. From a fantasy perspective, I actually think the addition is going to be a subtraction. I think Stefon Diggs is not fully roasted and cooked, but I think his best years are behind him, and I think he's going to be more of a problem child than he's actually going to be a help in the slot. But the other aspect, Tank Dell is going after Nico Collins and Stefon Diggs in drafts. When he was playing with CJ Stroud, he led the team in targets, yards, and TDs. And he averaged over 70 yards and almost a full touchdown per game with CJ Stroud. Fun note, CJ Stroud with Micah Parsons was asked to build his perfect receiver core. He said Devontae Adams, all-time great, Jamar Chase, freak athlete, and Tank Dell as his wide receiver 3. He knows where money is made. Tank Dell does work. He is coming back from an injury this season. I'm going to be curious to see with him looking like a starter from the jump and seeing how that goes. Now at 9.5 wins, Rob, where do you got the Houston Texans this year?
Right below it at 9, which is crazy for me to say that about a team in Houston. But like you said, last year,
a team that won double digits last year.
Yeah, they shocked the world, but I think they're going to come back down a little bit. They'll win 9. I feel good about that.
Steven.
I agree with the Stefon Diggs take. I think it's going to be more problems than anything else, and I can't really trust the health of some of those players. So I'm going to sit at 10, but I don't think they win the division.
So you have them just over at 10.
Yeah, 10.
Now, with the talent on this team, I think that they should be able to build with continuity and go up. But like I said with Stefon Diggs, I think it's actually a detractor, especially with that many young players that are going to have to deal with the, let's say, unjustified behavior potentially, as we've already seen it in the preseason. I have them at 9, just like Rob. Now, shifting over to Don's every year pick of the Jacksonville Jaguars, I mentioned before, I think Trevor Lawrence has to do it this year. I cannot see a circumstance that it doesn't work, because despite all of his failings, he was still 6th in the NFL in deep pass attempts, and the Jaguars added Brian Thomas, who had a ton of bomb touchdowns in his last year in college, and they added Gabe Davis, who has been able to do nothing but catch deep touchdowns periodically. So I think they're just going to try and play into Trevor Lawrence's strengths there. And if you want those statistics on Brian Thomas, he had 17 TDs in, 12 games last year in college. 9 of them were over 30 yards. Davis, since coming into the NFL, has the highest average depth of target in the league. And he's 2nd for most yards per reception since coming into the NFL. So he is a guy that gets deep. They're playing to Lawrence's strength, and it's going to be a chuck and duck when it's not Travis Etienne. So, 8.5 wins. Rob, where you got him?
I'm under at 7.
Steven.
I'm at 11. I trust Doug Peterson.
I do like Doug Peterson as well, but I think that they have some issues that they need to work out on the line, and I think they need some issues worked out on the defensive side as well. So I have them just under at 8. So Rob and I are close. Part of me will always root for Steven to be right here, because a good Jacksonville team is just more fun.
I just think that's the team that just has the division number, right? Like, I think because they could run through the division, that helps them, and they'll run into some cupcake teams. Like, that's kind of like
half of their division.
It's like the old middle 2000s Dolphins teams. They were bad, but they beat everybody in the division all the time
because they were bad. Yeah. So shifting from Jacksonville to Indianapolis, I mentioned Anthony Richardson. When he's healthy, big asterisk because it only happened for a few games, he rushed 25 times in 4 games. Now, remember, 2 of those games he had to leave early with injury. So he had 2 full games and maybe 3/4 of one and had 25 rushes. And as I mentioned on this show last year, he is bigger and faster than Derrick Henry. Now, I hope he develops as a passer, but he ain't there, which limits Pittman and everybody else on that team. But they also had something that I really look for in teams, where they had among the lowest player turnover. Now, They've already been a very highly ranked offensive line. They are a very good blocking team. Their defense is going to have continuity. I like Shane Steichen. I like the OCs he's brought in. It's really going to go as Richardson goes. And if he stays upright, I can see them making some noise. But at 8.5 wins, I'm going to bake in him only playing 12 games. And I think that they're going to come in just under at 8. Steven.
I got them as a 6-win team.
Okay.
And I'm leaving it at that. Like, I don't. The last 2 teams on this division, it's a coin flip of who wants to lose.
He's not wrong. I agree. Actually agree with Steven. At 6, I'm still feeling a little generous, but I fully agree with Steven on 6. This is a team, like, of course, you can't judge anything by preseason, but just looking at the roster here, I'm not looking at anybody that makes me go, ooh.
Now, I will say this with Tennessee. I'm sorry.
Steven is now John Cena.
Well, he has his earbuds in, so we know he can hear me. But the last one we have in that, Tennessee. Tennessee. Now, I'm going to kind of bury the lead. The highest attempted air yards over 20-yard pass, so passes that go over 20 yards in the air, the highest in the NFL, not named Will Levis, is 15%. Will Levis did it 22% of his pass attempts. So 1 out of every 4 was getting chucked. Now, DeAndre Hopkins did not have the juice to help with that, even though he was a decent receiver. But they have added Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd, who have both excelled at deeper routes. Tyler Boyd less so because Jamar Chase came in and he became an intermediate. But they signed Calvin Ridley, who was top 5 in deep targets last year for the aforementioned Trevor Lawrence and his deep success, possibly attributed to Calvin Ridley. So again, the team is going to try and play into their young quarterback's strengths. New offensive coordinator Brian Callahan called the 5th most pass plays in his 5 seasons with the Cincinnati Bengals. So he is going to want to chuck it. They have added Tony Pollard. Now, I will fully acknowledge again that was a bad call by me that Tony Pollard was going to be great, but allow me to clarify. He mentioned on multiple occasions that he did not feel right and fully recovered from his broken leg until after their week 7 bye. Now, if you wanted to look at avoided tackle rate, and that's the ability to break tackles, avoid tackles, just essentially to stay up as a running back. For that first half of the season, roughly, Tony Pollard's avoided tackle rate was 7.3%, which is, what's that word for trash you like to use, Stephen?
Garbage.
There it is.
Thank you, sir. After the bye, Tony Pollard became a top 3 running back with a 25% avoided tackle rate. And that's when he said he was finally healthy. I know we mentioned that Tennessee's line is terrible, but I think his elusiveness might help. And the big note to have, Tyjae Spears had over 50 catches as a rookie running back. That is almost unheard of. I think he's going to get a lot of work, and I think Tony Pollard is going to get a lot of work in the same space. I think they're going to be another chuck-it team that might be a little bit of fun. So, 6.5 wins. Rob, where do you got them?
By the way, we have a Sam Ellinger sighting in the game. Anthony Richardson is on the sideline. Give me 8.
Wait, is Anthony Richard on the sidelines by force or by choice?
No, he looked like he was hanging out. So
okay. Steven, 6.5 was the win total on BetMGM for the Tennessee Titans. Where do you got them?
I'm sorry, but analytics make numbers seem like things are more important than they are. Tony Pollard is still butt cheeks, and he will always be butt cheeks. He reaped off of Zeke's hard work. I'm going to give them 5 wins.
You mispronounced fat work for Zeke.
I mean, he got big, but he opened up all the holes for the other guy. But yeah. I say 5.
And can I make a quick observation while we're getting reset here? No prime vision on the preseason game.
You mean no Ryan Fitzpatrick?
No, there's not the cool prime vision thing that I like so much on Thursday Night Football.
What, the ads? I'm not.
Have you not watched the game in prime vision? Oh, it's dope.
I might have and not even noticed.
It's almost like you're watching Madden unfold.
Yeah.
They follow all the routes and stuff. I love it. I absolutely
It's
love
interesting. I will say this. It adds an element to the game.
Mhm.
But I actually concur with Steven. I got 5 wins for Tennessee because they may be fun to watch chuck it around. That doesn't mean they're going to win. So, finishing it off with the AFC West. Now, I reserved what I think to be the best call from last season for this particular division because of the Kansas City Chiefs, and it was not by me. It was actually by Rob Irvin. And he called
winner.
He called the exact matchup of the Super Bowl. He just had the winner reversed. So that's pretty slick. I appreciate that call.
Thank you, sir.
The big thing with Kansas City is uncertainty with Rashee Rice, who was decent last year. He accomplished a lot of things. But if you've looked at a lot of what's been going on with practice, with preseason, with who they've brought in, they are trying to shift to a run-heavy, deep pass team so that they're not reliant on Travis Kelce or Rashee Rice over the middle at intermediate routes. That's why they've got guys like Sky Moore. It's why they brought in Hollywood Brown. It's why they drafted Xavier Worthy, who had the fastest combine time ever, which I still want to see the paperwork on. It felt a little suspect to me. But they are trying to shift, and in that same scope, Isaiah Pacheco is getting his first season as the unquestioned guy, and he was top 5 in red zone rushes and top 10 in yards over expectation. So if you take in broken tackles and any kind of botched blocking assignments, Ente or Romo?
Ente.
Cállate la boca, Ente. Cállate la boca. So
he doesn't speak French.
So I think Isaiah Pacheco is actually going to backpack this team, and I love watching him run because he just looks like he's mad at the ground with his legs flipping out. So there's a lot here, and I will never doubt Andy Reid. I don't think any of us are allowed to ever again unless it's passing on a cheeseburger. But with a very high, the second highest win total in the NFL on BetMGM at 11.5, I personally have him at 13 because I think to borrow Steven's vernacular, the rest of the division is booty cheeks. Steven, what do you think?
I got him at 12 wins, but same thing. You can't doubt Andy Reid, his play calling, everything like that. And if Taylor Swift is still floating around, I believe she has some magic juju. I hate to say it.
Well, the next leg of that,
I'm not a Swiftie.
The next leg of that tour starts in October at Joe Robbie.
All right, Rob. 11.5 for the Chiefs. What do you got?
I'm also at 12. I do believe they lose week 1. I think that because they're playing opening night against Baltimore, I think Baltimore is going to come in a house of fire. And then everybody's going to think the sky is falling with Kansas City because Monday morning quarterbacks, or in this case, Friday morning quarterbacks. But I think they're going to get that out of the way, and then people are going to remember, oh, this is the Chiefs. You are the champs until somebody tells you otherwise. And I am not betting against them right now.
They're getting the Patriots treatments from the years of old where they lose a game or two early, and it's like, oh, is this the end of the dynasty? And then Belichick just comes in as the Dark Emperor and wipes out everything.
Andy Reid gets him some tendies, and it's on. That is a grown man that used the word tendies in a commercial. Okay,
I know.
It was the finger movement across the table.
Yeah, the
stubby little fat fingers.
And nobody has better chemistry on screen than Pat Mahomes with him. I don't know what it is.
So, shifting from the ultra successful Kansas City Chiefs to the Las Vegas Raiders. Rob, you want to take it real quick?
Because we know on September 21st, the autumn wind is a Raider.
Now, apparently, BetMGM doesn't have a very high opinion of the Raiders either, with a 6.5 line set for their total. The interesting thing about that is they've done nothing to improve the team to me. They drafted Brock Bowers, who is awesome.
One of the best names in football.
But when's the last time a tight end actually made a team go that wasn't a Kelce? especially in his rookie year. But the big thing you have there, Luke Getsy, who I am shocked got another gig, is their new offensive coordinator who loves 12 personnel. Stephen, as our resident athlete for football, you want to explain 12 personnel for our audience real quick?
No, because it takes too long.
I'm sorry?
No, I don't want to waste that much time when
That completely
and it's
took
the
me off
Raiders.
guard.
Yeah. Well,
No.
I'll do it then. So 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends. So it's basically just going with a beefy line. Zamir White's going to get a lot of run, but it's not going to be good. Now, the other big
Look,
aspect of that is
you're giving it too much time. Just know Uncle Rico is playing quarterback. You don't have to worry about what personnel is out there.
Did
They're
you see
going to
did you
Raider.
see
They're not
hype
going to be
video
great.
that got posted?
No.
He did a hype video to No Easy Way Out from Rocky 4.
Yeah. There's no shortcut home.
In a half shirt. Now, the reason I brought up the 12 personnel is Luke Getsy used it the 8th most in Chicago. If you remember, Chicago sucked on offense last year if your name wasn't DJ Moore. But they do have Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers, so they have a young set of tight ends that could be good. But that also means that Gardner Minshew is going to be dink and dunk when it's not a run, which is going to be bad for Devontae Adams, and even worse for Jacoby Myers, who was so lapping the field last year on value over expectation. It was 8.9 times what he was supposed to score because of efficiency. That makes no sense and is wildly unrepeatable. Now, burying the lead, 6.5 wins, I feel, is already too high. But Rob, where do you have the Raiders at?
I'm going to take the barely under at 6. 2 words, Gardner Minshew. The third.
Don't forget to say it like Love Roller Coaster.
No, that's not it. That's not the one they use.
It's the one I use.
No, they use Miss You by the Stones. Gardner Minshew. Yeah, it's the Raiders. Raiders don't Raiders.
The Raiders are going to be a team to reckon with in 2 seasons. Right now, I'm going to give them 7 wins. Only because they're going to go get Taylor Heineke or one of these quarterbacks that get cut off a team, and that's going to be your starting quarterback. Because you really think a guy who still lives in his mom's trailer is going to do anything with a styrofoam cooler and a Fu Manchu? No, Uncle Rico can go back to the mountains and throw it over it.
The man used the phrase Mississippi mud flap when referring to his mullet. I
actually have a very different point than Steven does in that scope. I don't think they're going to go get somebody else. I think they're going to try and run this team out. They're going to win 3 games, and they're going to throw their hat into the ring for one of the upcoming draft picks. It's going to be a race between the Raiders and the Giants for who's going to suck for Carson Beck enough. But another team that intentionally sucked for a draft pick, the Denver Broncos, which I can never hear the name without hearing it in Homer Simpson's voice being disappointed. Look it up. Now, you would think losing Russell Wilson would really make a team better, don't you? Nah. Cortland Sutton was the most TD-dependent wide receiver in all of fantasy with over 30%, 31.2 to be exact, of his fantasy points coming strictly from TDs. That is the worst rate in the top 50 receivers. And it's not getting better with Bo Nix's dink and dunk. Javonte Williams was an awesome running back coming out and broke tackles. Not just avoided, like we mentioned before, but broke tackles where people got hands on him 31.6% of the time before he tore his ACL. Since he's come back, and last year it was at 15.7. If you remember what I said earlier, that's not good. That was Tony Pollard, who is, what was it, Steven?
Butt cheeks.
Thank you. But they had the 31st ranked defense, or they have the 31st ranked defense in 2024. And all you need for evidence is the fact that they've done virtually nothing to improve it. They lost to their best player after giving up 70 to a Dolphins team that wasn't even trying to run up the score. They just couldn't stop them. The only line for hope in this team is that Sean Payton is their coach, and Bo Nix is the closest thing to Drew Brees that he's had since Drew Brees, which means shorter accurate passer. I don't think they're going to be anywhere anytime soon. But at 5.5 wins, I still think they're going to beat the Raiders because I have them just over at 6. Steven, where do you got them at?
I got them right at 7. I think them and the Raiders are at the bottom of the barrel, but it's 7. They're going to sneak in some games where who knows what happens, and there it is.
Where the opposing team is just gassed because Mile High.
Or they sleepwalk into the game. It's bound to happen.
Yeah, the overlooked is a big thing for the Denver matchups. How about you, Rob?
This team has 2 primetime games. One of them's going to get flexed because right before the bye, they're on Monday Night Football hosting Cleveland. The other one's not going to get flexed because it's Thursday night. It's a Thursday night game, and it's at New Orleans, which ain't going to be much better. I'm going to go the other way so that we have nice grouping, as they say in darts. I'm going to go 5.
Solid pick. But we've come to that ending time. And I've promised myself I'm not going to buy into the Chargers more than I should for the first time ever.
The Los Angeles Superchargers.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
However,
No.
the big change from the Chargers is looking like being a real football team versus a fantasy team. They have been great for fantasy with offenses throwing it around, but that hasn't won games. That's why they brought in Jim Harbaugh. It's why they brought in Greg Roman. Now, in the 10 seasons that Greg Roman has called plays as an offensive coordinator, he has peaked at 27th in passing offense 80% of the time. He has never been good or never been pass heavy. Jim Harbaugh, even less. He has been 31st in pass attempts as an NFL head coach, which was on a team that won games. The other interesting fact you have with that in the same scope. Can you name the RB1 for the Chargers right now, Rob?
I can't.
Steven?
Benny Zabumafu.
It might as well be because it's Gus Edwards, who has never had more than 190.
I love little brother Gus.
And what do I say about that? You never trust a man in the NFL named Elvis, Gus, or...
You're going to have to tell me.
Jim?
No. It's Elvis, Gus, or Kitna.
Oh,
No, I
see,
trust
Nick.
John.
That has been a long-standing philosophy to me.
But with the Gus thing I just did, he'll only play 2.5 games.
Well, that's what I was getting at. He's never had more than 198 carries, which he had last year and was toast. Now, if you look at his backup right now, it's J.K. Dobbins, who has been really good when healthy that one season. And if you saw the picture he posted earlier this offseason, he owes you an apology because I thought that was a shark attack victim, but it's actually his leg. And that's not what an NFL running back's leg should look like. But he also tore his Achilles, which theme of last year, in week 1. So he might not even be back at that point. The only one you could look at who might stay healthy is Kamani Vidal, who is a 6th round draft pick. I have no concept of what's happening here. If there is a team that goes out and gets somebody who got cut, I think it's going to be the Chargers looking for a running back who, I don't know, can stay healthy since they want to run some more. But they have some talent on the team. They still should be a better defense than they have been for ever. And I'm shocked that BetMGM has them at 8.5 wins. Steven, where do you got them?
I have them under at 8. I think with the new coach, the new energy, everything like that, I think it's going to click, but it's not going to click enough. I mean, I just don't trust Justin Herbert. He is, I don't know who to compare him to. He is just a stat guy. He looks good all game to do. He's rookie Derek Carr. You're not going to win anything with the guy. You're going to put up a bunch of numbers and look good, but you just ultimately suck.
The way I've always heard it put in that scope is Justin Herbert is Peyton Manning if he had Eli's brain.
He's Dollar Tree Phillip Rivers. How about that?
How dare you, sir? That's Family Dollar Phillip Rivers to you.
Oh, he is a family man. Gummit.
How about you, Rob?
What do I always say about this team?
Oh, I didn't want to bury it. I didn't want to steal it from you. I knew you were going to say it.
Charger
Thing again.
Charger. I don't get proven wrong often in that particular category.
Yep.
And when I look at the schedule, by the way, bye is in week 5.
Not good.
When I'm looking at the schedule after Halloween, I'll give you 3 wins. And that'll be half of their win.
Are you
total.
saying after Halloween? Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say 3 total.
No, they're going to get 6 out of it, but it's 3. Half of them are going to come before the bye because they come out of the gate. They'll beat Vegas. They'll probably beat Carolina. They could beat Pittsburgh. They ain't going to beat Kansas City, and then it's the bye. And then they've got Denver.
See, I don't think Denver is that big of a concern. And what we're going to need is Don to pick 7 because I actually have 9. I think that the quality of the coaching staff, as Stephen was alluding to, they're going to find ways to win those close games that they have consistently lost over their history. I think they're going to be just barely over the 8.5. I think they're going to have a winning record, but it's not going to be enough to make the playoffs.
And we are at half in the Indy game. It's 7 apiece.
Well, that's the wrap on our AFC. Do we want to hit the plugs or do something else?
Well, it's 26 after 8, so we need to go ahead and do the plugs and shut her down. We do want to remind everybody, as my shirt shows you, this is All In Weekend. Do the math. It's in London. Next year, it'll be here, so it won't be as bad. But do math. I'm going to take some of these headlines and put them in next week if we need them, because there's some stuff I do want to talk about, but I don't want to rush through it. Besides, we reserve this week and next week for NFL, and this week and next week for NFL is what we're going to do. We do want to remind you that Alex and I are in a fantasy football league together, so there will be discussion of that as the season goes on. I still declare draft shenanigans, but that's just me. Finish dead last, still get the last pick. But we're going to be, you guys know this show. If you know this show well enough after 14 years, life goes from August to February, baby. And it's almost time. It's almost time for college. I'm so excited. All right, over there. Ha! Got it right the first time. Above Alex's head to the right on your screen is our QR code. Take a snapshot of that. You get to all of our social media if you're on the video. Now, if you're on the audio, we want to say hello to you at Apple Podcasts, at Amazon Music, and at Spotify. You can check out our website at, I don't have the sound effects, www.theclubhousepodcast.com. I got 3 new reviews up for you today. We have the Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat. We have Between the Temples, and I did last night get to see Sing Sing. So go check out the reviews there. I'll find out everything you know, some stuff you don't. You can follow us on your social medias, everything except TikTok and X Twitter. It's the Clubhouse Podcast. Those 2, it's Clubhouse Show. You can follow me on your social medias if you'd like. Everything is Yes That Rob Irvin. That is spelled ERVIN.
I'm Vexploit on all social media. If you'd like to help out the show, follow the QR code. You can get to all of our different things. But most importantly in there, you can go to our Pro Wrestling Tees store at prowrestlingtees.com/the Cheap Popcast. Feel free to just follow it with a finger down there, Stephen. But we got a lot of different options within there. We got designs, we got color options. If you are an artist who has a suggestion of including something, you will get paid for any shirt that sells. Or if you just have suggestions on what you'd like to see in the store, you can reach out to me at alex@theclubhousepodcast.com.
The official fact checker of Sooner or Gator Productions is Don Ford. You can follow him at Igbunu on X Twitter, IGBUNUUU. We love doing live shows, hanging out with the Empire. You can email Don with questions about that. He is at don@theclubhousepodcast.com. Steven, anything you want to plug?
I am retired, but you can follow me at a Macy's Backstage or Home Goods because I like to buy trinkets and gadgets for the kitchen.
Can I tell you that today, because I forgot to say this in the intro, I went to a thrift store for the first time in forever today.
Did you pop some tags?
I did pop some tags. I found, those like carry-ons that turn into like they work out to be like a little mini dresser.
Yes.
I got one of those for like $15.
Yeah, you find everything there.
It's-
And like athlete's foot if you buy the shoes. I don't know.
I was gonna say including disease.
Can we also send a shout out to the Madre? She just texted me.
Mhm.
For those of you that know my mom, she's quite the quilter. And her quilt that she's made for an upcoming event, it won blue ribbon at the Western Idaho Fair. She also got a blue ribbon for her watermelon rind sweet pickles, and she got a third place ribbon on a quote forgot what it's called. It's QOV. It's Quilts of Valor. Quilts of Valor that they give to veterans that she did.
Yeah.
So the Madre doing well at the Western Idaho Fair. I almost said State Fair, but then that'd be really weird. Our normal show every Thursday night, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, is your one-stop shop normally for all things sports, entertainment, pop culture, and pro wrestling. We'll probably be doing some kind of posting during all in. You never know with us. We're out of control. That's what we do. Don will be back next week. We hope he's fine. They've just got some stuff that they're taking care of. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us tonight. Hopefully we'll have you next week as well, if you're available. Until then, for Alex, for Stephen, for Don, for the Empire, I'm Rob. Clubhouse is closed. Brittany Palmer, sending shouts and love to you, my friend. Later.